Welcome back to Tied Down TV, the punk rock opinion show with me, Geoff.
I'm Danny.
Before we start, obviously we just found out a couple of hours ago sad news that Barel of SS Decontrol has passed away.
Yeah, and anyone who has been a long time watcher of the show, you may not know actually that Al had probably something to do with the fact that this has lasted as long as it has. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we very first started this channel, me and Geoff, you might have noticed me and Geoff aren't professionals at this by any stretch. And if you look at some of them early videos, you can we're a bit better now, but we're not, we're not the best talkers in the world. We haven't had training of any kind to talk in front of a camera or anything like that. But I think when we very first started this, I think before we'd never done anything like this before, had we? And we didn't know what to expect or anything like that. And I think in our early days when obviously, I guess all channels have those dry periods where it doesn't seem like anyone's too interested or whatever, and it was during one of these brief periods about maybe a year ago that you messaged me while I was in work one morning when we went for a really dry period. We were getting low watch counts and not many subscribers, and you said to me, Danny, I'm going to put a massive smile on your face. And I said, why is that? He said, Barile has messaged the channel. And that's what you said to me. And I said, me, as ever the cynic, was convinced it was a wind-up, and you were like, no, it's really him. And you showed me the message, and when I looked at the profile, it was him. And what was a little bit like shocking to me is when I looked at his social media. Mm-hmm. It was just when I looked at that, I realised just how unwell he was. I guess I wasn't really aware of it at that time. Mm-hmm. But he reached out a number of times to the channel, and I think he was probably a big reason that this has carried on as long as it's gone.
Huge.
Would you agree with that?
100%. Because when we got that message, like you say, we were in a little bit of a slump.
Yeah.
How many videos in were we then?
Not many.
10 maybe.
Yeah.
It was only a few, but he'd gone back and commented on, I think the second one.
He commented on a few videos first.
Yeah, and the second one we ever did was the American Hardcore Part 1, the 80s, blah blah blah, and we talked up Bad Brains, and he commented, I would obviously love Bad Brains, and he then sent us that message. And yeah, I mean, you do this and you get some nice comments, and it's lovely. It does mean a lot. But when you're doing a show about hardcore, and an absolute hardcore legend sends you a message like that, and especially like say in the early days, spurred us on.
Yeah, I mean, I remember,
made me feel good about what we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that particular time we were kind of like, how much longer are we going to do? Is it one of them things? It was always kind of
flash in the pan.
Yeah, but I think it literally was him sending us that message that made us we were like, oh my god, we've got to keep going. Do you know what I mean? And it was just, I know, and since then we've had loads of like quite legendary people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we're not. It'd be a little bit sad to kind of put it out there every time we got a message off someone. We've had quite a lot of people who were pretty, you know what I mean? But I think it was him originally who reached out that made us carry this on and go, we need to carry this. This is great. This is amazing.
100%.
And he basically said that, he'd been watching us through his bad time and stuff, and all that. And what? It's always going to spur you on something like that, isn't it?
Brilliant.
Obviously, SSD, legendary band, and he was obviously a legendary person, and he's had a big hand in this carrying on as long as it has.
Absolutely,
I would say.
Yeah, 100%.
So, with that being said, today we are discussing Earache Records. Now, anyone watching this might realise that me and Geoff have picked in various lists many Earache records. So, I think what we're going to do today is talk about kind of like a best of Earache, discussing Earache records we've already spoke about, and then kind of moving on to a top 5 best of the rest, so to speak.
Yeah, 5 that we've not.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. So if we're doing a top 5 best of the rest after the initial discussion of all the classic Earache records, does that mean we can pick any genre we want as long as it's on Earache?
Well, I hope so, because I have.
That's exciting for me. That's exciting for me, and that's what I've done. Now, I hope you've come prepared, because I've had a bit of a week from hell and I've come with very little preparation.
Well, preparation-wise, so first and foremost, as you all probably know by now, we don't ever pick the same albums twice.
That's our policy.
So a lot of the ones we're going to talk about first are ones we've picked in previous videos, specifically the Grindcore one.
Exactly.
And then obviously, like Danny said, we'll move on and we'll pick 5 of our current, so...
But first, obviously, a bit of a history of the label itself. When was it established?
So
I'm not too sure.
85 in Nottingham, Digby Pearson, and it's obviously quite a famous label for death metal, grindcore, thrash, and crossover as well. But nowadays, I believe they put out quite a lot, just like heavy rock and other kinds of stuff.
One thing I'll say about it, and one thing I think's great about it, is I think if you're a young guy who's looking to get into extreme music, I'm not just talking about if you've got into metal, I'm talking about if you're into extreme, you want to get into extreme music. On these shows, I think you've got to look out for the Earache catalogue and the Peaceville catalogue.
Yeah.
You know, you can think of all the other labels like Nuclear Blast and
of course,
Century Media and all them. Yeah. But I think as well, the other good thing I like about Earache and Peaceville specifically is the prices are never too bad either.
No, even now, I picked up a few more recent ones on Earache on vinyl, and like 15 quid.
Yeah.
Don't get that much anymore.
Yeah, Earache and Peaceville, I'm sure we'll probably eventually do something on Peaceville as well.
Yeah.
But I always find that those two labels, like, the records are always pretty, they're pretty reasonably priced, and you are getting classics of the genre, each genre, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely.
So, just to talk about some of the classic ones. Now, Earache to me has, if we're talking about grindcore first, if we're talking about fastcore first, which is maybe where it started in the UK, I'm just going to say straight off the bat, I can't pick World Downfall by Terrorizer because I already picked it, but for me, that is the greatest grind album of all time. Right there.
There it is, right there.
Yeah.
But you've already picked it, like you say, obviously. But
yeah. But we got to mention it.
It's got to be mentioned.
If we're talking about the best of Earache.
Yeah, it's a fucking classic album.
Yeah.
Is it the best grindcore of all? For me,
in my opinion, yes.
For me, it's not. Mine, actually don't know. But this is one of my favourites. Slave into Obliteration by Napalm Death, which I picked in the grindcore one. This is the lineup from side 2. Scum accepted the addition of Shane Embry then on bass. For the whole thing, so it feels a bit more cohesive to me than the legendary one, which is obviously Scum, which kickstarting the whole what you're saying about grindcore. Like this was number 3 released, wasn't it? Scum on Earache at the time, and fucking the rest is history. But there's even members out of these bands have gone on to do some other amazing stuff.
Yeah. And then, like, just obviously thinking of, like, that UK thrashcore grind stuff.
Absolutely.
I got a few things here. Obviously, you know what I forgot to bring?
Go on.
I've showed it before. The Grind Crusher comp, with the Napalm. I forgot to bring it. I was in a rush. But, that's like a classic comp, which I've already spoke about, to be fair.
It is amazing.
But, when you're talking about that period of UK grind and stuff like that, I've got a few things here just to show that are cool. I've got Disgrace to the Corpse of Sid right here. Sore Throat, which I'm a fan of the second side. I'm not too much of a fan of the first side. But yeah, this is Mosh 10, right there. And then, a couple of UK fastcore ones. We've got 10th Degree War in My Head, right there, which is Mosh 9.
Nice. And
then I paid a pretty penny for this one, fairly recently actually. We've got Human Error by Unseen Terror. This is a good one, this one. This is Mosh 4, so this is an early one. This is an original. I paid pretty penny for this. 45 quid. Mark Glacier had a dig. Give me the little push I needed to spend the 45 quid on this. But it's a UK original. Now those 3 I've showed there, not easy to come by these days. A lot of the early Mosh, off Earache, not easy to come by, and I do generally, if I see one that I don't have, I will pick it up, even if I'm not a huge fan. I find the early catalogue really collectible, actually.
Yeah, well, speaking of, this is one I picked up a couple weeks ago in Split, Heresy, Concrete Socks, which is Mosh number 2. And I believe it actually came out before Mosh 1.
Which neither of us have.
Unfortunately. But this is actually quite collectible. This was one I saw in the wild, just randomly. Fucking I've got to have that. That's a class one. A couple of other classic grindcore ones that you might expect to see, but aren't going because they've already been picked. Extreme Conditions by Brutal Truth. Fucking mega. And one that I'm a fan of, but Danny might not be so much, is Carcass's Putrefaction, however you say it.
Yeah, and one we picked last week.
And one that you picked last week, which is another fucking classic, Sleep's Holy Mountain.
Away from the grind and death metal stuff.
When you look at all these ones that we're not allowed to pick, you got to think to yourself, like, what the fuck's left?
Well, that sets it up. Have you got something to say?
No, I was going to say, but
that sets it up perfectly for me, because this isn't one I picked, that's for sure, but I just want to show something before we go on to the 5 to set me up. Right, so I didn't bring the Grind Crusher comp, which I do have. Instead I brought this, Gods of Grind. Now this is Mosh.
Which is cool.
I don't know what mosh this is actually. It doesn't actually say. Mosh 63. Mosh 63 on the side there. Gods of Grind. Now, this says, this features Carcass, Entombed, Cathedral, and Confessor. Right, now, this sets me up perfectly because the best song in this is Shreds of Flesh by Swedish death metal band Entombed. Right, so that sets us up for what we're talking about here. Now, I asked him, he said we can pick anything we want off Earache. So, I'm going to set it up perfectly fine. So, I don't know if you want to pick them first, because I've just mentioned one of their songs.
I can do that if you want.
Yeah. So, Shreds of Flesh, I think, is the best Entombed song. It's one of the best death metal tracks ever. It was the song that got me into them when I heard this compilation. So, go on.
I need to get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, moving on then to our 5 of the rest.
Top 5 best of the rest from Earache.
So, kicking it off, you might have guessed, Left Hand Path by Entombed. Classic Swedish death metal. Fucking, this is their debut. Now, me personally, as Danny knows, and I think we've touched on this channel, death metal, not my biggest, go-to genre. I'm going to go there, though. This is where I'm going.
But everyone who's into extreme music likes them.
Yeah, I know.
And likes that album.
Absolutely. And I feel like, I don't know what sets this apart. I mean, it's a little bit catchy at times, which, again, just little hooky earworms in there a bit with some of the riffs. It's got a bit of a punk swagger and groove to it at times. It gets a bit doomy at times as well, I think. Generally speaking, obviously, it's just a classic death metal. Why everyone into extreme music likes it, I can't say for sure. I just feel like all the elements that make up Earache, grindcore, death metal, fast, thrashy punk and stuff, all kind of touched on, I feel, in this album. These have done a few other absolute belters as well. So without further ado, I'm going to move this as my pick number 1. Let Danny do his.
So yeah, this is maybe a slightly less popular opinion, but my favourite Entombed album is this, Clandestine. Now, the reason that is because I absolutely love the song Chaos Breed. Right, now, this album, they kicked the original singer out and the drummer took over on vocals, and I think he was the better vocalist, actually. Okay. Yeah, I actually think his vocals, they're a bit more hardcore, actually, a little bit more...
Yeah.
A little bit less tampered with, I'd say, as well. There's less samples in this, you start fiddling around with samples and that a little bit.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. They don't go over the top in it. You know what I mean? It's I love Left Hand Path. Don't get me wrong. I fucking love Left Hand Path. It's an absolute staple of death metal.
Yeah.
But I think this is a little bit underrated. This one, do you know what I mean? And I just think it's a bit more of a complete sound.
Okay.
There's still them little grindcore elements in there that Earache were doing at the time. And yeah, I love Entombed.
Yeah,
a proper love Entombed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even Wolverine Blues, which is a little bit more, a little bit more out there with the death and roll stuff.
I think it's great.
Yeah, but yeah, nice. Entombed, Clandestine.
Excellent. Okay, so number 2 for me. This is a bit of a classic staple of Earache Records. I've gone for Streetcleaner by Godflesh, the debut album by Justin Broderick, who, when I said briefly talked about Scum before, he's on side A of Scum. Left this, I think he's formed around 82 originally, but under a different name. He didn't start releasing until 88 after he'd left Napalm and stuff. This is just fucking absolute UK industrial noise, whatever you want to call it. It's a fucking classic. It's definitely not for everyone, I get that, but...
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you're not a fan. I mean, first of all, that fucking artwork's incredible, I think. It's very striking, but just the sound of it, the guitars in it aren't used as the lead instrument almost. It's noisy, scratchy bits. The bass and the percussion is what drives it, and vocals are sparse and quite misanthropic. It's not the first industrial album. It's definitely one of the most influential, though, I think, especially to come out of the UK. Again, he's gone on and done various other things. You should definitely go and check out of some of his other projects and some of the other Godflesh records as well. So yeah, that's my number 2.
My number 3 is Napalm Death's Harmony Corruption. Now, if you remember way back to our Grindcore, I believe it was our Grindcore video, I said, maybe quite controversially to some of our then viewers, that I prefer Napalm Death's second period to their first, and that is true. I definitely prefer this and Utopia Banished to the stuff that came before it. I had to pick one, this or the other. I rate them 9 out of 10 and 8 out of 10, which is pretty high.
Okay.
I've just about gone for this. Amazing. The pace is brilliant. Again, they haven't abandoned their grindcore completely. It's there, but this is where it's not maybe bursts of what you'd expect from grindcore, just bursts of noise, complete songs. Now, if you're a band like Napalm Death in the late 80s, early 90s, and you want to make a brilliant death metal album that's gonna go there alongside some of the greats that have come before, what do you do? What is the thing you do? You go over to Florida and you go and visit Mr. Scott Burns.
There you go.
Everything that guy did around that time was gold. Literally everything. And that is produced by him as well. And yeah, one of their most famous tunes on this, Suffer the Children, which I know you're a fan of, even though you're not a fan of death metal as such. I know you're a fan. You were waiting for it. I remember you were waiting for it when you were playing.
Great tune.
Yeah, but my favourite period of Napalm Death easily was this and Utopia Banished, that second period after their grind period. My kind of thing, before I even got into hardcore, was what I was listening to, all that type of stuff. Yeah. Love it, absolutely love it.
Cool, man. Okay, so next one for me, pick number 3. I'm going to pick one that we did Doom and Sludge Metal last week. This one got mentioned a couple of times in the comments, so I've gone for Forest of Equilibrium by Cathedral. Another ex-member of Napalm Death, Mr. Lee Dorian, kind of took it from one extreme to the other, didn't he? Because he went from playing ultra fucking fast to ultra fucking slow. Their sound evolved a bit. To be fair, this is slow and doomy pretty much all the way through. They definitely incorporated more like psych and 70s rock stuff into more of their like latest. Or definitely moving on from this.
Yeah,
opens up with like a nice medieval guitar, which kind of suit in the artwork, which I'm gonna say I'm not a big fan of actually, but I think maybe just because it looks a bit dated in terms of the thingy of it anyway. But it's amazing. Like I say, it's a classic Doom record, and it didn't get in last week's lists from me, but it's definitely getting in this one. So go and check it out.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of picks now that I believe are two of the greatest death metal albums ever. First, we've got Altars of Madness by Morbid Angel. Now, this and Blessed Are the Sick are both 10 out of 10 in my opinion. They're one of the greatest death metal bands of all time. How did I decide which one to pick? Well, the reason I decided which one to pick is simple. 3 words: Maze of Torment. They are the 3 words that have made me decide to go for this. Now, Morbid Angel, I think it's kind of... I liken death metal to gaming. Right, I was thinking about this before. Okay. I liken death metal to gaming. I'm not no gamer, right? But think about it, right? When you're a kid growing up in the 80s, early 90s, think of a game like Golden Axe on a Sega Genesis Mega Drive, depending on where you're from, right? You could see what was going on. Graphics were good, playability was good, not mad going on, not mad, it did the job, right? Yeah. Years later, you go into your nephew's bedroom or something, he's playing Fortnite or something. Yeah. You look at what's going on. There's like a character with an elephant head. There's flashes going everywhere. You've got guns that don't exist. There's things going off all over the place. You're like, well, I don't know how these kids can tell what's going on to even enjoy this. I liken that to old school death metal and new, not at all, but something like, let's say, tech death or slam and stuff like that. Now I listen to I'd say Morbid Angel back then were probably you've got bands like Cynic and Origin and all that back then, but I reckon these were as technical as you were going to get back then while keeping it old school. They still had that thrash death thing going on, which I think was golden in the late 80s, early 90s. That no one can tell me. I mean, I know a lot of punks got turned off it because lyrics went from being about environmental issues to maybe fantasy and stuff. The music's amazing. Do you know what I mean? Now, this period of death metal, like I say, I love it, but that kind of, like I say, probably as technical as it got back then. But when you look at like a lot of this slam stuff, I know Suffocation released Effigy of the Forgotten. That, to me, that's when it's like, there's too much going on. Okay. There's too much fucking... You know what I mean? It's too mad. Yeah. I don't enjoy that type of stuff. Hardcore's gone a little bit like that way too. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of this slam influenced beatdown stuff. For me, just that stripped down old school death metal. I fucking love it. Morbid Angel were the best.
That is one. That's a death metal album I like as well. As well as Entombed. So 4th pick for me. Actually, another band that got highly shouted for the Sludge one that I didn't pick, but I was saving them for this. Gone for Art Problem by Iron Monkey. Fucking UK sludge legends, absolutely amazing band.
They were the band that everyone was messaging us saying, "Why have you picked Iron Monkey?"
I know. maybe we should have picked them last week, but I thought out of Earache's releases, like, even if we were still picking ones that we picked before this, still probably would have gone in my top 5. It's filthy fucking sludge, man. It's amazing, so good. They only released two. They released the self-titled one and this, and then they split, and the singer, Johnny Morrow, I think it is, he passed away. They reformed in 2017, released a couple of records. Some people like them, some aren't as big of fans. I quite like them personally. But all that aside, like, if you're going to go and listen to Iron Monkey, go and listen to something like this. It's fucking stunning. The artwork, I think, caused a bit of controversy. I'm going to unfold it a bit because it is quite cool. I can't remember the guy's name now. Look at that.
Ooh.
Yeah. It caused a bit of controversy, that.
Let's have a look at that.
Because it's fucking cool. What's the guy's name? I've written it down here.
What's that? He's sticking into his willy?
I wouldn't even like to guess, to be honest with you. Mike Diana, his name is. I think he's one of the only people, if not the only, who's been arrested for his art. It's very cool. Like, you know, these are quite influenced by Sabbath, obviously. I'd say Grief.
Is that dick blade and snot?
It looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah. It seems to me. It's very, very graphic, very controversial. But all that aside, the music's filthy. It's fucking great. The riffs are heavy. Yeah, just get on it. Iron Monkey.
Next for me. Another one of the best death metal albums ever released, From Beyond by Massacre. Now, I went to see Massacre a couple of years ago. One of my biggest disappointments was going to see Massacre in Manchester for their whatever anniversary it was of this, maybe, or it was some kind of anniversary. Couldn't have been this, actually, because this came out in 91. Yeah, and this was like, this would have only been like 2 years ago, maybe, yeah. And they didn't have a single piece of merch. And I think I remember messaging you going, I don't believe this, there's nothing. There's nothing here, nothing. I wouldn't have minded rocking a Massacre shirt. Again, thrash death. Thrash death is where it was at for me back then.
That's where you lie, innit?
Yeah, 100%. I love it. I love it. Again, it's where I cut my teeth before even discovering hardcore. Yeah. You know, you put the likes of Altars of Madness and Cause of Death by Obituary, From Beyond by Massacre, all them, the Hypocrisy albums, all that stuff. I put that right at the top of the tree when it comes to death metal, you know, Entombed as well. Yeah. Even other Swedish bands like Unleashed, they had played that like thrash death, that I love it all, do you know what I mean, all that stuff. Again, I think this was produced by Scott Burns. If you, like I said, if you wanted to produce a great death metal album in the early 90s, you went to see Scott Burns down in Florida. I think he got kind of sick of it in the end, and he kind of only does it very rarely now for bands. But at the time, he was churning them out, and they were all top of the tree death metal classics. Yeah. And just the way this starts, the way it's got that kind of build up, and then it just comes in with that and really fast straight away. And it comes in. Love it. Massacre, From Beyond.
Cool. So last pick for me, I've gone for Dirge by Wormrot. So I had to get a grind album in there, didn't I? These Singapore band from Singapore.
Very nice guys, we met them.
Very cool. Yeah. Although we only, out of the original lineup, we only met the guitarist because at the time
he was the singer had left, hadn't he? Yeah.
And the drummer, which they are actually now back together, all three of the original members. But I did pick a Wormrot album when we did Grindcore, but it was the first album, Abuse. Yeah. This is fucking killer as well, though. In fact, I'd say this has got more of like a punkier crust punk thing. Whereas like the first albums maybe got slightly more of a death metal thing in terms of like, you know, what kind of grind they were playing. It's just fucking stunning. This is, I mean, it's there's no bells and whistles about this really. It is just a straight up fast grindcore album. It's got a song on it called You Suffer, But Why Is It My Problem, which is obviously a homage to the Napalm Death song. I think it's 4 seconds long, this one, so bit prog compared to the Napalm Death version. But yeah, if you just want some straight up fast fucking amazing grindcore, Wormrot, amazing.
I'm definitely cheating here, but I feel like I need to talk about 2 albums here, so this is a joint last pick. Ooh, I've gone
tied for 5th.
Hazadous Mutation by Municipal Waste and Best Served Cold by Narcosis, which is a discography of all Narcosis stuff. Now, talk about this one first. Municipal Waste, their best album in my opinion. They were really big in the mid-2000s, still pretty big, but they were massive then. They really seemed to like charge a real charge of American crossover at the time. Played a bunch of times, saw them a bunch of times in tiny venues, always fun. Great band. And yeah, now you're talking about like straight up just grindcore, madness, craziness, Narcosis. These played Liverpool. Video Nasties put them on, I'm pretty sure, and I could be mistaken, but I think it might have been their last ever gig.
Oh wow.
And it was that's where I got this CD, at that show. And yeah, they were incredibly tight, amazing, really good. Mosh 368.
Wow.
There you go. So yeah.
Cool.
We've missed out loads of stuff, haven't we? But,
obviously, I'm sure you're going to tell us in the comments which ones we've missed.
But before we go, it's time for that time again. It's time for that moment. It's time for Cond RA.
So this week, I'm going to hark back to a con that's happened to me a while ago, but it's very fitting for this episode. So
before you show him, tell
I'm
a
not
story.
going to show him. I'm going to tell a story. I'm just getting it prepared. But before, so I was on Discogs perusing, looking for a specific album that I hadn't had on vinyl. I did have it on CD a long time ago, which would be the debut album by SSS, Short Stop Sock. I found it on Discogs. Originally, it was released on Dead and Gone. And if you know the band, you know originally their logo, they had to change it anyway.
It's quite controversial,
shall we say. But I wanted a copy of it on vinyl on Dead and Gone with the original logo. Found it. That's what it was listed at. I thought, fucking right. Great price as well. Snapped it up. When it arrived, actually it was the Earache version, which
with the altered logo,
with the altered SSS logo, and obviously it's on Earache because they re-released the album when they signed the band. Still a great, amazing album. Still glad to have it on vinyl, but I did feel I actually messaged the guy and everything. I felt very, very conned by that. I remember messaging him and saying,
did he reply?
Hang on, mate. No, ignored me.
Oh, that is a con.
Yeah, and I was like, hang on, mate. Like, you've listed that as the wrong fucking thing. Like, you know, I wouldn't have, you know, you could have just been honest. But anyway, so yeah.
Actually, let me see this right. Because there might be a con, a hidden con in this.
All right.
So, let's have a look. So, you see right there, I don't know if you'll be able to see it actually, but I've got a thanks right there, Danny SYB, somewhere there, right there. But I actually thought AJ SYB hadn't been thanked in it, but the con is on me actually because he is there. Maybe it was there was definitely a format version which I was thanked and he wasn't. I think it was the CD version now. Cool. Harping back. So, but yeah, I mean it's a con, but it's not the worst con.
It's not the worst con in the world. No, like I said, it's still a great record. But that's it, and that's our video. Those are our picks. So shout out in the comments, obviously, any of the ones you know that we'll have missed, or some of the other classics. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Jump on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, all that, messages, follows, likes, we love it all, and we'll see you next week.